Alright, so I got a writing here I did probably 5 months ago on why I'm quitting poker. So I'm going to read it and explain why it feels pointless to even play poker anymore. Why am I quitting poker? I was introduced to poker my freshman year of college. I saw that there was an edge in playing the game and eventually began a 15-year obsession. It is not that I rank this poker experience as good or bad, but need to say it is a roller coaster of emotions. It is like the coyote chasing the roadrunner. I spent well over 50% of my waking hours staring at the computer screen trying to match numbers and shapes. I rode the evolution of perception at a slightly faster pace than most, and then about 11 years in, something absurd happened. Prior to this obtuse happening, I had profited over $550,000 in different poker games. I played over 20 million hands of online poker in my life and have come to a shockingly jaw-dropping realization. This realization is so radical in the minds of people that even mentioning it causes goosebumps for most. The realization was truth. I realized that truth exists and my beliefs are vapor when held under the critical scrutiny of truth. I spent the last 4 years on the inward journey toward truth realization. I have successfully completed this process and am baffled on what my life move is next. When I play poker now, I sit in a state of complete zazen surrender, waiting for incoming sense data from the brain, aka thought. I am certain that the reality is projected out of the mind for me to perceive. So in other words, I am certain of this. There is not many things I am certain of, but I am positive that consciousness chooses reality, including thoughts, emotions, and physical, downloads it to my human brain, which I see as the CPU unit, and then projects that reality out there. And within all of that, I am just the awareness of everything happening. And I am not certain of this, but I am very, 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 very convinced that it is just all pre-recorded down to the smallest detail. How it works, I am not sure. I'm on this side of the field, consciousness is on the other side of the field, and in between me on this side of the field and consciousness on the other side of the field is that matrix field of infinite possibilities that consciousness is choosing for me to perceive. I can't, this is inescapable, and I believe if anyone does the effort, they can see it for themselves. The thing masking it is you on this side of the field interrupting the direct downloaded data from consciousness that is choosing it from the field. In other words, you're creating this own illusion of self-consciousness on the other side of the field that is obstructing the direct flow from consciousness directly. And I'm only speaking through experience and the removal of ego, because ego is the only thing that keeps us in duality and denial. So I'll keep reading here. The thoughts that I receive are also part of this virtual reality. I have reached singularity and am confused on how to play along with the world of people that haven't the slightest clue truth exists. So now I'm an awake dream character, recompiling my sense data from a lifetime, wondering how I'm going to integrate with a world full of people totally ignorant to the factual obviousness that truth has to exist. This is very perplexing for me at this point. I am not sure of my new role because I learned that I am artificial and my self-consciousness is artificial. I learned that judgment of any kind toward this virtual reality causes resistance and pain. So why do I try to go back to a game I cannot play? Poker is a man-made game based on completely fictional assumptions. If you look at cryptocurrency now, you see that we are actually creating content. We're creating context, and everyone's believing it. Back when poker boomed in 2002, around when Moneymaker won, the same thing happened. Content was created, context was created, literally out of thin air, and followers and believers of that content over time has created this cult of delusion that poker players reside in. I was in this cult. I was in this complete fiction, and I'm pointing it out now as a past poker player that none of it is true. None of it is factual. All of it is 100% false. If something is 0.00001% false, it is 100% false. That's what the journey toward truth is. Removing the false and waking up to what's true. And every single assumption that poker players have is based on a fictional assumption, based on false assumptions. So the entire foundation of the game and the context is false. It's no different than science, anything. If the original foundation is false, the layers on top of it are going to be false as well. So this is weird. It's very strange to come and tell poker players they're chock full of bullshit. So I'll keep reading. Since everyone agrees on these assumptions, they continue to convince themselves of how it is not. They cling to ideas as if they are true. Poker players seem to enter into isolated belief systems or cults of beliefs in order to maintain the illusion of control. So most poker players are already like black sheep outcasts of the world. They're just residing within their own delusion and adding to that delusion. And the entire thing comes from the need to control something you never were in control of. You're just being fooled by thought and emotion, which are 100% false. They do not seem to let their belief guards down to anyone or anything. This is what I notice with card players. They rarely want to talk about it unless they're at the top of their game and want validation from the people underneath them. So these training sites and everything I see as a need to hold up those delusions and convince people below them. I mean, it is a cult. Like, I don't know any other way to describe it. It's 100% a brainwashed cult playing poker, period. The point I'm trying to emphasize is that if you wish to see reality clearly, then you must remove those filters of ego. So we must remove the brainwashing in order to see clearly what's happening. So when I describe consciousness choosing the images from the field, downloading them to your human brain and projecting them out there for you to perceive, that's what I'm saying you can see for yourself. That the illusion of selfhood is not the thing choosing the images, in control of the images. It's the thing trying to manipulate the images, trying to delusionally believe they understand how the game's operating and working. But all you're seeing is patterns on top of fictional assumptions. And it will lead you into insanity by design, which will maximize your delusion to a breaking point to where it has to blow up. It's like a dam piling up with lies and lies, more and more water, until that dam eventually bursts. So I'm going to keep reading. This means tearing apart everything and seeing what remains. What remains is a completely predetermined virtual reality. I would describe it best as a pre-recorded digital reality. We have been convinced that we live these analog lives, but the more and more technology continues and we continue to integrate with it, it's easy to see we're easily swimming in upstream technology. In other words, the illusion of time is fooling us and has fooled us and brainwashed us so much that we can't even grasp it's possible we're living pre-recorded lives. I am the awareness of this reality. I perceive this reality and I do not have any actual control over it. It is essentially a machine that I live in. My brain sends energetic pieces of information in the form of thoughts and emotions. So I am the receiver of reality. Consciousness chooses reality, thoughts, emotions, physical, for me, downloads it to my brain, and puts it out there for me to perceive. Those thoughts and emotions match up with external reality. So the game we're trying to play is to get everything matching up. When we experience dissonance, or spiritual dissonance. It's when our beliefs aren't matching up with reality. And the only way to get those perceptions to match up with reality is to remove the attachment of judgment that is blinding you to lucid perception of reality. In other words, I see belief as the thing that is hardened within self-consciousness, and until you scrape away those layers of glue, otherwise known as judgment, you can't see the perceptions clearly or access any perception on the fly. You're hardened to that specific belief because you're convinced it is true. That's how belief works. If you're convinced it is true, then it's a belief. And everything is going to be belief. And then not until all of the glue is scraped away does belief turn into perception. And then it just becomes a game. So I'll keep reading. This is how the flow of perception works. So when people say they're in the flow state, or in thought flow, or in the zone, this is basically what they're saying. It's like a free flow without obstruction of belief and judgment getting in the way of that thought flow. So like, we are the obstruction. What we believe we are is the thing that's obstructing thought flow. So when the flow is halted, it is because ego is demanding a meaning and control. So we want meaning and we want to control our lives, but our wants don't matter. Our wants are just more beliefs we're trying to force to be true. They're not true. No matter how much we want it, it doesn't matter, because truth will prevail over the long run. So this is where total honesty will take you. It will take you to this exact state of lucid seeing of how the game actually operates, this game of life. So my part is in the process is awareness, non-abiding, non-dual awareness. So I'm not obstructing, I'm not getting in the way, I am just the translator and playing my role without obstructing it with belief. The strange thing that happened to me 4 years ago was the clarity Zazen meditation does during internet poker sessions. This is a state of death awareness and surrender to all beliefs previously indoctrinated within my self-consciousness. In other words, if it was a lie and I have made the mistake of believing it is true, it had to be ruthlessly annihilated. The images on the screen of the mind, also known as the cards on the computer screen, are not out there separate of my consciousness, but they are no different than any other piece of the external world. They do not actually exist, and I noticed that the card flow was responded to my ability to surrender control. So if you play internet poker or even live poker in the state of Zazen meditation, you will see quite clearly that your thoughts and emotions are your dream state reality, and that card flow will match up with that. The more you obstruct it, the more you try to force your math beliefs and every foundational belief that you have played with thus far that you think and believe is making you money, that is not how the game actually works. That is how the delusion operates. That is not, if you stake your life on truth, it is a totally opposite direction. It is a state of death awareness where you no longer deny death and put it in the background somewhere so you can entertain lies. You have death right out in front of you, and that death awareness creates basically no thought, no feeling, complete lucidity as you're playing. Eventually, your self-consciousness, that thought thing that keeps going louder and louder in your head, will get softer and softer until you can't even hear your own voice in your own head. That is complete awareness. There is no reason to have a brain full of thought. There's nothing to think about. And if you do not know how to think, then you got a long way to go. Thinking is primarily destructive. There's no need for it. It is the intermediary that obstructs reality and clarity. Um, it's the thing we call ourselves. It's just our character, it's our personality. It was developed from such an early age. That's how brainwashing operates. Brainwashing operates in a way that the foundation is every human believes the universe exists, and every human believes the universe is external to them. The truth is not that. The truth is consciousness is all. There is only consciousness. So the contents, also known as the universe, are out there, not actually existing. They're just thoughts. They're just emotions. Those thoughts and emotions are just a spectrum of the lie. It doesn't matter that it's a lie. What I am starting to see matters is where that line in one's brain gets drawn between truth and the lie. And if you're believing the lie is truth, then the confusion will set in, the insanity will set in, the delusion will take over, the brainwashing will take over. So I'll continue reading. What was I surrendering control to exactly? I was asking the simple question of who am I? If you ask this question over and over, this is how self-inquiry operates. Who am I? And you get to the answer. If you continue asking yourself, who am I? And you don't allow yourself to believe a lie in this question because you're looking for the accuracy of who am I, then you will get to the truth of no self. The unspeakable truth of no self in this dream. The question was gas poured onto a small flame of curiosity. So I wanted to figure out my authentic character. So when we go after authenticity, we slowly wake up to the obvious fact that there is none and there can never be any, because there is no true self. There is no actual authentic self. It's just another subjective spectrum. And we're always trying to sell the dynamic of our authentic character to the people around us. Whatever is right. Like, that is the simple belief that will also take you to the truth. You'll stop living in these alternate realities, these if this then that, I could have done that, it should have been this way, no, like, there's only one reality, and there's no reason to go off on these tangents of anything else being possible. Like, whatever is right. Wrongness is impossible. Wrongness is delusion. Wrongness is fear. It's emotion. So if you fail to perform self-inquiry, then you cannot wake up. If you do perform self-inquiry, who am I? You will wake up. Truth is that simple. It is the simplest thing there is. Delusion is infinitely complex. So if you wish to reside in delusion, continue adding to your delusion, and you're going to continue adding to the brainwashing that the universe actually exists. It does not. It's a belief. It's a thought. It's an emotion. It's a happening. It's contents within consciousness. Everything on this side of the field is false. Everything on the other side of the field is consciousness. So it's a virtual reality. So who the fuck am I quickly became my new obsession. I was going to get to the truth and nothing was going to stop me. My brain was full of thoughts, and over the course of 4 years, I became completely thoughtless. That's what death meditation, death awareness meditation will take you. Thoughtless. There's no need for it. There's subtle energies that we believe we understand. They're blankets, band-aids. If we start to go thoughtless, we start to panic because we're losing our blankie, we're losing our pacifier to life. But those who dare to keep going, or pre-recorded to keep going, like me, eventually move into this new paradigm, this top-level paradigm where you no longer need the illusion of selfhood to go about your day. It just is there. So I woke up to the fact that thinking comes to an end point. I realized that correct thinking was destructive and needed no reinforcement. My brain went from a context-filled delusion of layered thought to an internal screen of images and projections of memory. So to simplify that, when you're done, after you're awake, after you're no longer fooled by the shadows and the context and the storyline that everyone has been playing along with, you can access basically any part of your mind, any part of your memory, and bring it into your awareness and look at it. And you can look at it deeper and deeper and deeper. You can zoom in further and further. You can go into those specific portions of delusion, but something needs to spark it. In other words, if people are having a conversation, then it will spark that portion of my memory management and my delusion, and I can access it. And I can also instantly delete it and negate it as it's happening. So you basically learn to be what is the freaking word I'm looking for? So I'm trying to find it. Like, this is an example of how it works. Doublethink. So the word used for it is doublethink, where you know something is false, but you choose to believe it anyway. So you become a master of doublethink. That's basically what waking up is. You're no longer having an energetic reaction, an emotional reaction to it being false. You've already processed it as false, but it is the best mode of navigation for you at that specific moment in time. So you use it anyway. It doesn't matter that it's false, because you're awake to the fact that all of it is false. And false or true, it really doesn't matter, especially in a game. And I consider this to be a video game. And I'm just the awareness of the game. So, imagination is what comes into the light after all context is deleted. So as context and the layering of words, as that began to fade in my head, it all turned into images. Kind of like Einstein says, the same thing happens. It's just, you're becoming more advanced in your awareness, more advanced as a conscious entity playing a human being here on planet Earth. There is never anything that needs thinking about after truth realization. Any thinking is and always will be destructive, because all thinking is ego's need to stay relevant and survive. But as death will tell anyone that repeatedly asks your character does not actually exist. Death told me that I was mistaken on everything and I know nothing. I found out that knowing I will never know anything means I finally know something for certain. I know that I know nothing. So I know with full certainty I know nothing. And that is the only knowing you need after you're awake. This is the only certain knowing you need. Everyone else is currently masquerading their lies around as if they know something to be true that is not true. They're totally unaware that their original foundations and assumptions of reality are false. And the only way to dig at those assumptions is to remove the layering of the onion of delusion layer by layer, and then you go, oh, that's what's at the core, that fictional assumption. So the certainty of my uncertainty is finally something I can be certain of. It may not sound like a winning prize for ego, but truth does not care or judge. My opinions have nothing to do with truth. Truth is truth, and your human opinions of truth cannot alter or change it. The option is to come into alignment with truth through the process of unconditional surrender, or to cover it up with lies you can convince yourself of or others around you. Either path will lead you to awakening anyway, because the inflating of the ego will inevitably lead to its bursting. So this is me speaking from experience. I had a very huge delusional ego. Like, I literally believed everything is true my entire life and continued riding that ride. And then the anxiety and the stress and the discomfort and the overthinking and the inability to fall into moments outside of my giant poker ego. When I wasn't playing poker, I couldn't even hear or see or talk to anyone else because I was always thinking about poker. I was always trying to figure out the next thing I needed to do to win. And it kept going further and further and further, and that delusion kept growing and growing and growing until it reached a bursting point. It's like the Big Bang happening within your own brain. That's how I would describe it. I can speak these patterns with such confidence because I became aware of it as it happened to me, and to see everyone and everything. Death showed me that consciousness is truth, and I am it. Death showed me that all intelligence is illusion. Death showed me that the external world is just a thought, and all thought does not exist. The universe is a thought, and it can be extinguished in an instant. Death showed me that consciousness is immortal, and the contents of consciousness are false and non-existent. Death showed me my complete futility in the entire operation of the dream state. So I spent 4 years unmasking the fraudulent contents of this dream and found out that all contents are false. I learned that truth resides outside of physical reality and organisms in it. I realized that truth is irrelevant and need not be sought. I realized that the only reason I woke up to truth was because I was not able to leave it alone. Even though I have finished this absurdly magical inward journey of awakening, I still have plenty of hardened perceptions of the dream state. I am not going to play poker because I woke up to the isness of reality and the brokenness of my dream character. I have no ambition to play the game of delusion inside the game of delusion in order to convince a non-existent character, Jason, that is good at something. So the entire game of poker is duality. It's delusion within delusion. We don't need to we created a game within a game. It's basically like selfhood masturbation is all it is. I don't have a better way of describing it, so that's how I would describe it. You keep refueling this delusionary character full of fiction. And the only reason you do it is because you're scared to face facts. Like, that's what happens. We get scared and we go back to the computer and click our buttons, or we go back to the live poker tables and throw our chips. That's what's happening. That's scared people, but those scared people are going to inevitably wake up first because their delusion's going to max out first. So the breaking will happen, and then once you see through the illusion, it's like watching a train wreck. You can't possibly look away. And until you actually see through the illusions and delusions, you'll just think I'm crazy. And you'll use that to inflate your own ego, which will inevitably take you to maximum delusion. So if you ever see people kicking meek people down even harder, all they're doing is making their ego harder and larger until it will break. Some ego is so powerful, though, that physical death much of the time comes before the breaking of the dam of delusion. So I'll keep reading. The awkward thing about poker is the concealed patterns of futility within it. Any human could wake up and see that their thoughts and emotions are their dream state reality. Anxiety is the need to control something you are not in control of. It is a sign of misalignment in the virtual reality. These guiding chips of comfort and discomfort help us on our way to truth realization, which I urge anyone reading this to avoid at all costs. So I'll be the first to tell you, don't go after truth, avoid it at all costs. Like, it's going to happen anyway. That's the way the game's designed. It's David versus Goliath. You're going to be swinging your sword at empty space until you realize how tired your hand is from swinging a sword at empty space. So I point out this urge because we are indoctrinated by each other to avoid it at all costs. And if you are not ready for it, then keep hiding from your beliefs and belief patches. So what you'll do is you'll use your illusion of selfhood to block me out, or block what you're hearing and reading out. In other words, you will resist this, and that will continue to persist until you look at it honestly. That's how a seed in the mind works, whether it's a virus or something awesome. It doesn't matter, okay? Happiness, sadness, everything just is. Truth is all. And truth is king. It is a pointless endeavor anyways. The issue for people trying to avoid truth is that it has nothing to do with your layered delusions. Truth is there for anyone to see and has never been hidden. It is only these delusions of non-existent reality of which you are certain are true that stand in the way of the realization of it. The thing I find exceedingly strange is how everyone can agree on such absurd lies as true. No human in the history of history has ever actually proven a single thing, and we all agree that fictional assumptions are good enough to go about our days, including me. I still would agree that good enough is good enough. Sure, there is no external universe that we all share. Sure, the material world actually exists. Sure, my life matters. Sure, my parents exist. Sure. This is doublethink. This is me knowing it's all fake, but playing along anyway, playing my character anyway. What else can you do? Walk around as a no self? It's not an option. Can't do it. Why do we say sure to all of it? Probably because we cannot control it anyway, and are essentially controlled by our emotions. So, if emotion gets heightened, then something must get lessened, and that is all logic. Thought and logic are superfluous to emotion. So, even though emotion and thought are delusion, emotion is going to overpower thought in the long run. Thought may win in the short term, but emotion's always going to be more powerful. You know how they say a beating heart is 100x more than the brain? That kind of makes sense. Emotion is what triggers the thought. We trade emotion for analytical thinking. We trade analytical thinking for emotion. Which is better or worse? It does not matter. Both things simply are. And all I can do is become aware of what my machine self is feeling and thinking. I am the awareness of it all. We have gone so far with this whole human drama thing because of our need for connection, to feel connection. It does not matter what or who we connect with, but we need to become aware of connection. The connections made most are opinions, judgments, and beliefs. They build up a sense of selfhood based on the connections of them and the ones around them. This is because once we firebomb selfhood the whole way down, we find out that we are here alone. And this loops me back to the contents of consciousness being false. You find out that you are consciousness, and everything in this reality is untrue. So as much as we want to believe our friends and family and universe exist, we can't make that true. We can only all agree on playing along with it as true. And a person goes on this inward journey toward truth all by themselves. And the more they try to connect with people on what they're seeing, the more those people shoot their denial at them, which is just energetic thought shields, vibrational emotion. So this is the loneliest journey you can take, and you are completely alone on it. Only after you wake up can you pretend to reconnect with people. I prefer no confusion and clarity in my mind, so that's why I'm being so brutally honest. Plus, I can't possibly not be. Consciousness no longer has me as this obstruction in the way, and I'm as shocked as my words and my writings as anyone else. I did not see life going this direction for me. So I'll keep reading. I found out that I exist and that I am consciousness, but I cannot prove anyone else exists or that they are consciousness. I have to assume that they are in the same state I am in, but I cannot know for certain unless they run the process of awakening themselves. The irony of all this is when I even try to mention it to another person, they become skeptical, and extreme skepticism is what that person needs in order to wake up to the truth. You have to put this model of reality to the test. You have to do it everywhere and all of the time. It must penetrate all the lies and untether you from the physical world. If you take an honest look at your situation, you will see that every road is a dead end. You could try to travel all these roads until physical death, or you can pull on the thread of any portion of reality and see that it does not unravel a little, it unravels the entire way. Nothing survives the fire except the truth of your being. The apocalypse people are terrified of happens in your own skull as you go through your everyday routines. While I am on the topic of routine, try to be honest about yours. It is a loop in which you have belief, or a loop in which belief has you. So everyone is in these loops of life, these loops of thought, and those thoughts are their physical and emotional realities. That's the way the game works. And that looping takes you into a tighter and tighter loop. And the only way out is to go backwards, because you've been going the wrong direction. It's not actually the wrong direction, it's just the way the game operates. So once you get yourself into such a tight loop of belief to where you are completely isolated from the world and completely isolated from delusion, and you're essentially in a corner wondering what the fuck is going on, now it's time for you to actually wake up. And you realize belief has you now, you don't have belief. And you start heading the opposite direction, surrender instead of control. So I'll keep reading. You are controlled by your own bullshit, and until you realize that you are honest and are honest about that, you stand no chance of change. These loops are formed by following your comfort and avoiding discomfort. The awakening process is a dive directly into discomfort and seeing how fears operate and how fear operates you. It is all fear, and it gets layered and glued together by judgment. This forms a hardened sense of self. I am not making these statements to say one paradigm is better than the other, but to point out the obstruction. I lived in both states and have no ability to go back to the former. I get very nostalgic at times to my former fooled self, but realize that the fire will always burn. The mental capacity for my character, and a different way of saying the fire will always burn, is a way of saying nothing lasts forever. We try to make it last forever, we try to hold on to it, but that's not the way the game works. It's going to take it from you regardless of if you make it to physical death before you wake up. It's still going to take everything from you. That's what death is. The mental capacity for and preparing for death is one of the most adult grown-up things we can do, because now we're putting the scariest shit out there for us to perceive instead of pretending it's all true. So I'll keep reading. The obvious obstruction that unconditional surrender is the only option will end in insanity thought loops. This is a dive into the great unknown. This is the blackness that I spent my life avoiding. It is so eye-opening and magical that I was not able to look away. I slid off the cliff and did a free fall into the void of no self. The actual self is the weird finishing line. The actual self is the weird finishing line. No self is true self, and no self is impossible and boring. The dam of self-consciousness got so backed up that it gave way to consciousness, and it came to integrate with my self-consciousness. So as the dream's blowing apart, after it blows apart, it's already coming back together. In other words, the illusion of connection gets blown apart and then comes back together. Except now you know it's an illusion and you're not believing it is true. The separation of these two paradigms was also always artificial. It was not until I questioned it and annihilated the question itself that it became apparent. So when we ask these questions about life, we have to understand that we're being fooled by our own thought. The question itself doesn't exist. Therefore, the answer doesn't exist. It's about what exists and what does not exist. That's what the ride to truth is. It's not about what feels best or what we can agree on is best. That's irrelevant. That's just gameplay. I was beyond the point of loving, liking, caring, hating, and all other human distractions. I suddenly turned into the opposite direction. Once a game of inflation and connection became a game of deprogramming, deflation, and disconnection. So it's a flipping of the script on life, and you're going completely alone inward instead of outward. I had to die in order to be reborn. How far does it go, and how will I do it? It did not matter because I realized my life was forfeit. I was trading my life and character for the truth. I am unable to judge if it was good or bad trade, but it is the thing that did happen. I became completely selfless, and the irony of this is that people do not take kindly to a person that disrespects their own life on this level. So I have had people absolutely treat me like shit for going on this inward journey to no self, because I'm disrespecting and hating myself. I'm annihilating myself. I'm saying, fuck it. I'm getting to the truth, and I don't care if it kills me. Live free or die trying. Like, that is the journey I took. And people that are too scared to do it treat you like shit because they're operating under ego and they're not operating under surrender currently. My response to this would be many victimized stories of my upbringing and lack of self-esteem from the beginning. I was always a bit different than the others. I was always an observer and people pleaser more before the blast happened in my brain. So before my dam full of delusion burst, I was really a needy people pleaser, trying to make everyone happy, I was engaged in the rat race like everyone else. I pretty much believed anything growing up and sold the same beliefs to those around me. I thought by pleasing those around me I was doing them a favor, but realized now I was helping them build the waters in order for them to have their own dam burst. I was approving certain brands of bullshit and getting close and getting others to agree with these brands of bullshit. This bullshit I'm talking about may have been very convincing to the people I was speaking to and that were in my loop, but then I had to look for my next brand of bullshit and my next brand of bullshit, and eventually I said, fuck it, truth has to exist. Does truth exist? And I couldn't leave that question alone. Who am I? I couldn't leave that question alone. This bullshit is how we fill up the waters of self-consciousness. This is how we make the dam burst. It will happen regardless of whatever you think and believe you are or are doing. You're being fooled. It's much like a conspiracy, the way the game operates. I was fooled into waking up. I was tricked by the magic. I feel like a victim to it. Like, that's how it works. Everything is a buyer-seller dynamic in human land, and the game is money. Money is held in our minds, and it has so many by the neck. When I speak of my struggle or journey to anyone, they want to offer me solutions, but I am not seeking a solution because my brain does not engage in wrongness. In other words, I don't comprehend wrongness or the perception of wrongness. It doesn't click anymore. It's not really a thing. I only look at what is and try to say what I see, nothing else. I have a state of neutrality. I'm indifferent to everything. So nothing is wrong, and nothing ever could be wrong. It is foolish to consistently create fantasy problems for reality in order to convince yourself you have a control over reality. These people cannot help me because they are asleep. And it's like the saying, how can you help someone if they're in the same state you're in? And their only states are asleep and awake, and the intermediary state of enlightenment, or the cocoon stage. The 2 to 3 year inward journey to know self is the cocoon stage, or the enlightenment stage. After it, a mountain is a mountain again. Before it, a mountain is a mountain. And during it, a mountain is not a mountain. So it truly is that simple. I do not notice that they can help me with recompiling sense data. I do notice that they can help me with recompiling sense data and understanding conscious reality. So everyone that is in my life, I'm super grateful for, because they're helping me recompile my sense data to play my role as Jason again. That's just what they're doing, and I'm helping them to deprogram their sense data so they can wake up. That seems to be the pattern I'm watching. It's not good or bad, it's just the way it seems to be designed. Consensus reality is what all the dream characters agree on. This is a movement that does not change much in the illusion of time as the illusion of time continues, but the change happens very slow. Since everyone is asleep, then the utilization of emotion to produce or change is drastically reduced. The truth about all of our situations is that we know nothing and are going to die. This seems like the thing we should start with and not push away as if it is not the case. Agreeing on fairy tales other than this does not change the honest lucidity of our stark situation. People that say I think too much or tell me to do other than I am doing. They tell me to feel other than I am feeling. They tell me to think other than I am thinking. These people are scared and use my situation to inflate their own egos. This will lead them to the eventual dam burst as well. The life ride cannot be cheated, and wanting truth will automatically blind you to it. The very act of wanting is delusion at work. Understand that. This waking up to truth thing is a process. It's not a quick belief or band-aid. You're going to be going through 2 to 3 years of eternal hell, like internal hell. The very act of wanting is a huge blinder. Truth realization comes from a person out of nowhere and then devours them from the inside out, piece by piece, layer by layer. The only true option is suicide. And if you decide what you are going to live, then the bitching thing must come to an end. Bitching about life is just creating wrongness to what is, instead of falling into what is and integrating with what is. People are connecting through bitching. They're just last illusions of connection are usually going to be bitching. You are in a machine and on a ride. If you do not relax into the ride, and then it will lead you into a corner, and this will lead you the feeling of suicidal discontent so high that you will have no other option than to wake up. So when depression and suicidal discontent reach a maximum, the dam will burst for you, and you'll spend the next 2 to 3 years in that state, breaking out of your confines, realizing they were never actually chaining you down. It's just the way programming and deprogramming operates in the CPU unit of the brain. Which side of the paradigm you are in is not up to you, because I can promise you one thing for certain, and that is that there is no you. If you investigate the truth of you, then you will no longer have the belief on your side. If you defend the lie of you, then you will have belief on your side. Even if you become truth realized, you will still be 100% false. And the realization of this takes time to hash out. And I use the word hash out because that's how hashing works. That's how processing works. That's how the CPU unit, the intermediary between consciousness and you perceiving it, it's hashing. It's basically a computer. Energetic thought patterns defending the lie engulf your mind and the body into a state of raving insanity. The black hole and nothing forever becomes your constant state of functioning. Poker was a game inside of the game, but it did not conceal me from finding out my true nature. It went from one addiction to avoid truth at all costs to the very thing that did not allow me to believe such nonsense. It tore me apart from the inside out like a razor to the brain, peeling off each layer of smelly onion horse shit. My sins were my beliefs, and the pain-giving thing is those lies getting processed and hashed out like a computer program. It scraped it to the middle of the mind, which is just a giant eraser or trash can. So that fire burning is basically the center. That black hole is the center, the truth. And it's just a big toilet we can put our shit, and all of it is shit. And that is the priceless gift awake people have that non-awake, non-lucid people do not have. They're adding to their shit, and the awake person is always constantly throwing whatever's happening into that trash can or that toilet or that black hole. It is the black hole in which our shit must always end up, and the clinging against truth will eventually give way. I do not want to make this sound over dramatic or under dramatic, but I do want to give an accurate depiction of the dream scene with my unfiltered eyes. There is a natural balance and order to the entire scene, but individuals can only see a small portion of the whole. If you wish to open your mind up instead of walling it off with artificiality, then you must get real and stop playing a meaningless role in a pointless drama. If you desire long-lasting connection, then getting real is going to be the best route. These short-term ego-demanding connections, such as marriage or children, are band-aids to a waterlogged dam. Forcefulness of any kind will result in humiliation and blindness. So basically, when we try to force our beliefs into the world or into reality, it always ends in humiliation and blindness. And that humbleness will take you toward depression, and irrational depression will take you toward waking up. I'm not trying to scare you into the corner, but I'm trying to point out the flaws in groupthink. Humans seem to only learn through mistake, and I am all about throwing our meaningless lives on the chopping blocks. Give it a try, test it and retest it. You are consciousness, and everything telling you otherwise is a belief. Truth needs no defense, and any engagement in defense against truth is ego-demanding control and existence. There is no need to defend anything, and waking up to the obvious observation takes about 2 to 3 years of deprogramming. It is very easy to dispose of this paper and my context. This exact thing is the key to everything. Dispose of context as if it does not and never did exist. No amount of convincing will destroy truth, but a small amount of truth will destroy the convincing. You are convinced of a lie, and that is a damning indictment of your situation. Until you can admit honestly that you are brainwashed into believing what consensus reality believes, then you are in no hope of breaking free of this bizarre society. Obviously, for me to reach the state of being, I had to be in a pretty dramatic drama. Yes, my life has been the impossible task of pleasing unpleasable parents. That judged my every move, and they removed love and artificial support necessary for success. It turns out that the success ride of artificial support and belief systems is not the life ride. It turns out that I have nothing but gratitude for the immense amount of unrealistic pressure I allowed these parents to place on me. That pressure is exactly what allowed me to say, fuck it, I am going to find out what's really going on here. They cannot hear me, and they deny my actual experiences for their fairy tale versions of my experiences. They played their roles as parents perfectly for me to get me to the incredible amount of emotion it takes to destroy thought, context, and all lies. I no longer have to swing my sword at the air hoping it will hit something real. I know with complete certainty reality is magically real, but in no way is true. This line between truth and everything else is the line that is constantly being manipulated through clever wordplay in people's brains. The so-called smart people are just the most judgmental people. Smart is not possible, and if you are falling for smart people, then you are just being lazy in your own attempt to think. We are all just saying what we see, and the truth of what we see is nothing. We must speak reality into existence in order to maintain the illusion it's actually there. Only our egos have an issue with it all being holographic. And when we release this blankie for life, we will finally reach adulthood. So, yeah, I wrote that like 6 months ago, before I even started trying poker again. And now after am trying poker again, it's leading me right back to this and doing a video on this, because I don't know what to do with sleepwalkers and people believing the lies. Everything we ever believed to be true, if examined, we see that it's not. And we see that science is at a dead end, and we see that philosophy is at a dead end. It's just ideas. Truth exists. We don't have to pretend truth doesn't exist. I know I sound like a broken record, but this is what your brain will sound like waking up. It will be a broken record that will destroy the lies and destroy your character and destroy your persona, and you'll be awareness of the entire spectrum instead of a finite character in the dream. You can go back to playing that finite character in the dream, but you're not going to be fooled by the images and the thoughts and the emotions any longer. So this is me, again, recompiling my sense data. And I can do this without much obstruction, because I've been engaged in this for so long that I'm tired of fighting it. Whatever consciousness wants out of me, I'm gonna do, and I am more than prepared to die whenever that time comes. So, heresy, whatever, I don't really care about people's reactions to my words. I'm trying to put it in the most human way I possibly can, and I truly don't care about truth at all anymore, but I have to come back and do this and get this out of my system so I can move forward. I guess that's it for this truth video. It looks like it's coming to a close exactly on an hour, which is kind of what I wanted. Well done. So that's that video. Bye bye.